This is a True Crime in Real Time update from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
The Delphi murders trial will forever be remembered for its unsettling conclusion. But what if the jury's decision was based on an incomplete picture? On its face, Richard Allen's conviction seemed like justice served, a community finally getting answers. Yet, beneath the surface lies a murky web of missed opportunities and excluded evidence that could have dramatically altered the trial's trajectory. Start with Kegan Kline, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone following this case. Kline operated the Anthony Shot social media account, a fake profile designed to lure young girls. Just days before her death, Liberty German had communicated with this account. Authorities grilled Kline for hours, and his inconsistent statements raised more questions than answers. But the jury? They never heard about Kline, his sinister account, or his proximity to the girls in the days leading up to their murders. And then there's Ronald Logan, the man whose property became a crime scene. The girls' bodies were discovered mere yards from his home, and Logan had the audacity to provide a false alibi for the day of the murders. The FBI's search warrant painted a damning picture. Logan's history of violence and proximity to the crime made him a prime suspect. But like Kline, Logan remained a ghost in the courtroom, his name never uttered to the jury. Perhaps the most jarring exclusion was the defense's Odinism theory. The crime scene, they argued, bore hallmarks of a ritualistic killing, sticks arranged in rune-like patterns, symbols tied to an ancient Norse religion. The defense pointed fingers at Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall, local men with ties to Odinism. It was a provocative theory, one that could have shifted the jury's focus to other potential suspects. But Judge Francis Gull barred any mention of it, ruling the evidence insufficient. One figure briefly mentioned in the defense's Odinism theory was Elvis Fields, a local individual with alleged ties to Norse pagan practices. According to court filings, Fields was linked to social media activity that mirrored elements found at the crime scene, raising suspicions about his possible involvement. However, Fields has consistently denied any connection to the murders, publicly stating that these accusations have caused significant personal and professional harm. Notably, Fields has not been charged or officially identified as a suspect by law enforcement, and the prosecution has dismissed the defense's Odinism theory as lacking credible evidence. So again, the jury heard none of it. And what about the timeline? In 2017, Allen's name appeared in a tip to law enforcement, but that tip was misfiled and forgotten for 5 years. It wasn't until 2022, during routine digitization, that a volunteer stumbled upon this critical piece of information. The delay gave Allen years to live freely while the families of Liberty and Abigail waited for justice. This oversight? Another detail the jury never knew. Finally, the prosecution's case hinged on a single piece of forensic evidence, an unspent .40 caliber bullet found at the crime scene, allegedly cycled through Allen's Sig Sauer handgun. The defense shredded the reliability of the ballistic analysis, calling it a magic bullet theory. More damningly, they revealed that other suspects' weapons were never tested. The jury, however, was left with the impression that this bullet was irrefutable. Now imagine being a juror. You're tasked with deciding the fate of a man based on limited information. You don't know about the predator who chatted with Liberty days before her death. You're unaware that the landowner had a history of violence and lied about his whereabouts. You're blind to the defense's theory of ritualistic killings, and you're oblivious to the bungled timeline that delayed justice for years. Would your verdict still feel just? The prosecution told a compelling story, one that convinced the jury beyond a reasonable doubt. But with so many missing pieces, doubt seems inevitable. And in a case where the stakes are life and death, doubt should never be swept under the rug. The Richard Allen trial is as much a story about what the jury didn't hear as it is about what they did. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Why? Why were critical elements which could have provided broader context left out of the courtroom? Let's start with Kegan Kline and his Anthony Shots profile. If Liberty German interacted with him just before her death, why wasn't that fact center stage? Was it a strategic decision by the prosecution to avoid complicating their narrative? Or did the defense fail to push hard enough to include it? It's hard to ignore how pivotal Kline's involvement could have been. Was his exclusion a sign of protecting an ongoing investigation or a way to streamline the case against Allen? Then there's Ronald Logan, whose property literally became the girl's grave. His false alibi is significant. Yet, despite the FBI identifying him as a person of interest early on, his shadow never loomed over the trial. What exactly prevented his history and potential involvement from being fully explored? Did law enforcement conclude too quickly that Logan wasn't viable, or were there concerns about the jury interpreting his presence as a distraction? And what about the defense's Odinism theory? The defense argued that the crime scene bore hallmarks of ritualistic killings, a compelling angle that could have cast serious doubt on Allen's guilt. Yet the judge ruled it inadmissible. Were the ties to Odinism too tenuous, or was the court wary of veering into sensational territory? How often do judges decide what's too out there for a jury, and where does that leave the pursuit of a comprehensive defense? Then there's the misfiled tip, an astonishing example of investigative error. A volunteer clerk uncovered it years later, leading to Allen's arrest. Why wasn't this critical oversight a larger part of the trial? Wouldn't exposing such a significant lapse have given the jury a clearer picture of the investigation's flaws? Why was this downplayed? Was it to avoid undermining confidence in law enforcement? Finally, the bullet evidence. It became the prosecution's linchpin, yet its reliability was far from airtight. Why were alternative ballistic tests on other potential suspects' weapons never conducted? Did the rush to close the case with Allen lead to a narrow focus that excluded other possibilities? Ultimately, the bigger question looms: if the goal is justice, how can we trust a process that seems to selectively curate what the jury is allowed to consider? The holes in the narrative aren't just inconvenient, they're pivotal. So, why were these elements sidelined? Were they too weak, too complex, or too disruptive to the story the prosecution wanted to tell? That's all for now. We'll keep digging and getting you the facts. Thanks for listening, and be sure to press subscribe so you don't miss any of our updates.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface,
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
where hidden killers roam unnoticed in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Brueski as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.